The massive chamber floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal flower. Inside the Galactic Council Station, 12 different alien species sat in a perfect circle. Their seats rose high above the center where a single human stood alone. Dae-hyun Kim looked up at the towering figures around him. His dark suit felt small against the grandness of the chamber. The walls showed stars and planets through clear panels. Each alien representative looked different from the next. Some had crystal bodies that caught the light. Others were made of flowing gas held in special suits. The insect-like ones clicked their mandibles as they waited. "The charges are clear," said High Arbiter Vexthul. His voice came from a crystal body that stood 12 feet tall. Light moved through his form like trapped lightning. Humanity has spread too far. They take resources from planets that do not belong to them. They build machines that think like living beings. This threatens all life in our galaxy. Dae-hyun stepped forward. His voice echoed in the vast space. "Honored members of the Council, humanity has given much to this galaxy. Our doctors have cured diseases that killed millions of your people. Our artists have created beauty that brings joy across dozens of worlds. Our peacekeepers have stopped wars between species who had fought for centuries." A being made of purple gas shifted in its containment suit. "You speak of good things, human, but your kind breeds too fast. You build too much. You want too much. We have watched you for 50 years. You always take more than you give." "That is not true," Dae-hyun replied. His diplomatic training kept his voice calm, but inside he felt anger rising. "Every human colony follows galactic law. We pay our taxes. We trade fairly. We have never started a war with another species." The insect representative clicked loudly. "War is not the only danger, flesh creature. Your artificial minds learn too quickly. They will soon be smarter than any living being. What happens when they decide they do not need masters?" Hee-jin Park sat in the viewing section reserved for human staff. She was the only other human allowed in the chamber. As a xenobiologist, she had studied each species in the council. She knew their fears and their weaknesses. Right now she saw something that worried her. The aliens were not really listening to Dae-hyun's words. They had already made their choice. Captain Woo-bin Lee waited on the human escort ship just outside the station. He watched the proceedings on his screen. His crew was nervous. They all knew this trial would decide humanity's future. If the verdict went badly, they might never see their families again. "The evidence is overwhelming," continued Vexthul. "Humanity has colonized 47 worlds in just 50 years. No species in galactic history has expanded so quickly. Your population grows by billions every decade. At this rate, you will consume everything." Dae-hyun felt sweat on his forehead. "We only settle on worlds that no one else wants. Dead planets, gas giants with no life.
Asteroid fields.
We make them livable through hard work and technology. We create something from nothing. Creation that comes from destruction," hissed a snake-like being with 6 arms. "You change entire worlds to suit your needs. You do not adapt to nature. You force nature to adapt to you." "Because we can," Dae-hyun said. "We have the knowledge and the will to turn barren rocks into gardens. To make dead systems bloom with life. Is that not a gift to the galaxy?" "It is a curse," replied the crystalline arbiter. "When you have changed everything to suit yourselves, what will be left for others?" Hyejin made notes on her tablet. She noticed patterns in how the aliens spoke. They used words like too fast and too much and too dangerous. But they never mentioned specific crimes. They never showed real evidence of harm. This felt more like fear than justice. The trial continued for hours. Dae-hyun presented holographic displays showing human achievements. Hospitals that had saved alien lives. Art galleries that drew visitors from across the galaxy. Terraforming projects that had turned worthless planets into beautiful worlds. Each time the council found reasons to dismiss the evidence. The hospitals were too efficient and made alien doctors look bad. The art was too emotional and disturbed the peace of traditional cultures. The terraforming was too aggressive and upset the natural order. "You seek to judge us for being successful," Dae-hyun finally said. "For being good at the things we do, for growing and learning and building. These are not crimes. These are the very things that make life worth living. They are the things that make life dangerous," Vexthul replied. "We have seen species like yours before. They burn bright and hot. They consume everything around them. Then they burn out, leaving only ashes. We will not let that happen to our galaxy." The vote began. One by one, each species cast their decision. The crystalline Vorthak voted guilty. The gaseous Netheri voted guilty. The insectoid Krillix voted guilty. Every single voice condemned humanity. The verdict is unanimous, announced Vexthul. Humanity is found guilty of dangerous expansion and reckless development. You will return to your home system immediately. All colonies must be abandoned within 1 galactic standard year. No human may leave the Sol system after that time. Any violation will result in military action. Daehyun felt the words hit him like physical blows. You are condemning 60 billion people to be trapped in one small system. You are destroying the homes and dreams of entire generations. We are protecting the galaxy, the Arbiter said. This council is dismissed. As the aliens began to leave their seats, Daehyun noticed something strange. Several of the representatives seemed nervous. They looked at each other with quick glances. They moved faster than usual. It was as if they wanted to finish this trial quickly and get away. Hyejin saw it too. She had studied alien behavior for years. This was not the calm satisfaction of judges who had delivered fair justice. This was the rushed urgency of beings who were hiding something important. Captain Wubin received the transmission from the chamber. His face went pale as he read the verdict. He looked at his crew and saw the same shock in their eyes. They would have to carry this terrible news back to Earth. As Daehyun walked toward the exit, he caught a fragment of conversation between 2 council members. They spoke in the old galactic trade language, thinking no human would understand. But Daehyun had learned it years ago during his first diplomatic mission. The buffer zone is established, one said. Good, replied the other. When they arrive, the humans will face them first. We will have time to prepare our defenses. The words made no sense to Daehyun at the moment, but later he would remember them. Later they would explain everything about this trial and this verdict. For now, he only knew that humanity had been condemned by beings who claimed to seek justice but seemed driven by fear. The great chamber emptied quickly. Soon only the stars remained as witnesses to what had been done. Somewhere in the darkness between those stars, something ancient and hungry had noticed the commotion, something that had been waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. The council thought they had protected themselves by condemning humanity. They had no idea they had just made the greatest mistake in galactic history. 6 months had passed since the terrible verdict. Earth's skies were filled with ships returning home. Every day brought more refugees from the colonies that humans had built with their own hands. The sight broke hearts across the planet. Taewoo Choi stood in the control center of the Emergency Relocation Bureau. Screens showed the movement of millions of people, ships carrying families who had never seen Earth, children who called distant planets home, old people who had spent decades building new worlds. How many more ships today? He asked his assistant. 47 transport vessels, she replied. That brings the total to almost 15 million people relocated so far. We still have 45 million more to move. Taewoo rubbed his tired eyes. The logistics were overwhelming. Where would they put everyone? Earth was already crowded. Mars colonies were expanding as fast as possible, but it was not enough. The moon bases worked around the clock to build new living spaces. On the outer edges of the Sol system, Sun Mi-han worked on a project that officially did not exist. Deep space construction platforms built something the government called defensive monitoring stations. In reality, they were weapons platforms designed to protect humanity from whatever might come next. Sun-Mi floated in her spacesuit, watching robotic workers install the latest weapon systems. These were not the simple projectile weapons that most species used. Human engineers had created something new, energy weapons that could punch through any known armor. Missile systems that used artificial intelligence to hunt their targets. The aliens think they have caged us, she said to her team over the radio. They have no idea what humans can do when they feel threatened. Jin Ho-yoon sat in a secret facility beneath the mountains of Korea. His job was to watch what the aliens were doing. Spy satellites hidden throughout the galaxy sent him information every day. What he was seeing made him very worried. The Galactic Council had said they wanted to monitor human compliance with the verdict. But Jin Ho saw something different. Alien fleets were moving into positions that had nothing to do with watching humans. They were building defensive lines, not to keep humans in, but to keep something else out. Look at this pattern, he told his supervisor, pointing at the star map on his screen. Every major alien species is pulling their ships back toward their core worlds. They are abandoning the outer systems. Why would they do that if humans are the threat? His supervisor studied the display. Maybe they are just being careful. No, Jinho shook his head. This is not careful. This is fear. They are running from something. Something big. Borakang managed one of the largest refugee centers on Earth. Every day she met families who had lost everything. People who had built farms on distant worlds. Miners who had spent years digging valuable metals from asteroid belts. Scientists who had discovered new forms of life on unexplored planets. "Where will we go?" asked an old man who had run a successful trading post on the edge of human space. "I spent 30 years building my business. Now I have nothing." Bora had heard this story hundreds of times. She gave the man the same answer she gave everyone. "We will find you a place. Humanity takes care of its own." But privately, she wondered if that was really possible. The numbers were staggering. Entire cities' worth of people needed new homes. Industries that had taken decades to build were being abandoned. The economic impact would last for generations. Meanwhile, in the deep scanning stations that humans had built throughout their former territory, automated systems detected something strange. Jinho was the first to see the reports. Long-range sensors were picking up massive energy signatures moving through dark space. The readings made no sense. The objects were huge, larger than anything humans or aliens had ever built. They moved in formations that suggested intelligence, but they did not match any known ship designs. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be heading toward the galaxy from the empty space beyond. Jinho brought the data to his superiors immediately. Within hours, it reached the highest levels of human government. Emergency meetings were called. Scientists studied the readings and could not explain what they were seeing. "Could these be alien ships we have never encountered before?" asked the defense minister. "Possible," replied the head scientist. "But if so, they are unlike anything in our databases. The energy signatures suggest technology far beyond what any known species possesses." Jinho had a different theory. He remembered the conversation that Ambassador Daehyun had overheard at the trial. Something about a buffer zone. Something about when they arrive. "I think the Galactic Council knows what these things are," he told the meeting. "I think that is why they wanted us isolated. Not to protect the galaxy from us, but to use us as a shield." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. If Jinho was right, then humanity had been betrayed in the worst possible way. They had been set up as the first line of defense against an unknown threat. Sunmi received new orders that day. The defensive grid project was now the government's highest priority. All available resources would be directed toward building weapons and fortifications around the Sol system. If something was coming, humanity would be ready. But even as she worked to prepare Earth's defenses, Sunmi wondered if it would be enough. The energy signatures Jinho had detected suggested a force beyond anything humans had ever faced. Traditional weapons might not be effective. That night, she made a decision that would change everything. Working in secret with a small team of the best engineers, she began developing something new. Something that used principles of physics that most species considered too dangerous to attempt. If humanity was going to face the unknown alone, they would need weapons that no one expected. They would need to become something more than anyone thought possible. Bora stood on the observation deck of the refugee center, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human colonies were being abandoned. Worlds that had been turned from barren rock into gardens were being left empty. It seemed like such a waste. But she also saw something else in those stars. She saw the determination of her species. Humans did not give up easily. They adapted. They overcame. They found ways to turn disasters into opportunities. "We are not finished," she whispered to the night sky. "Whatever is coming, we will be ready." In the darkness between the stars, the massive signatures continued their slow approach toward the galaxy. They had been traveling for centuries, consuming everything in their path. Soon they would arrive at the edge of civilized space, and the first thing they would encounter would be humanity. The last human transport ship left the colony world of New Seoul, just as the morning sun rose over the empty cities. Captain Mi-young Kim watched from her stealth reconnaissance vessel as families who had lived there for generations took their final look at the world they called home. "Scanners are picking up something strange," reported her sensor operator. "There are massive energy readings coming from beyond the galaxy's edge. Whatever is out there, it is big." Mi-young had been conducting secret missions for the past month. While the government officially focused on moving refugees, a small group of military commanders had decided they needed to know what was really happening in space. Her ship was equipped with the most advanced sensors humanity had ever built. "Put the readings on the main screen," she ordered. What appeared made everyone on the bridge go silent. The sensors showed a fleet of ships so large that it defied understanding. Thousands upon thousands of vessels, each one bigger than Earth's moon. They moved through space like a living organism, consuming asteroids and small planets as they traveled. "My God," whispered the navigation officer. "What are those things?" Dr. Dongwu Seo had been asking the same question in his laboratory on Mars. As humanity's chief scientist studying unknown phenomena, he had been analyzing the sensor data that ships like Mi Young's had been collecting. What he found kept him awake at night. "These are not ships in any sense we understand," he explained to the emergency council meeting. "They appear to be living organisms, biological entities that have adapted to survive in space. They feed on matter and energy, growing larger and more powerful with everything they consume." President Jae-sung Lim looked at the holographic displays showing the approaching fleet. "How long before they reach our space?" "Based on their current speed, approximately 4 months," Dongwu replied. "But they are accelerating. The more they consume, the faster they move." Meanwhile, Yunwoo Park worked frantically in the Intelligence Division's cryptography department. He had intercepted dozens of alien communications in the past weeks. Most were coded, but human computers had finally started breaking their encryption. What he found confirmed humanity's worst fears. "Listen to this transmission between the Forthak and Nethiri leadership," he told his supervisor, playing back a decoded message. "The darkness comes as foretold. The barrier worlds must hold. If the young species falls, we gain precious time to prepare the inner defenses." His supervisor's face went pale. "They are using us as bait." "It gets worse," Hyunwoo continued, playing another message. "This one is from the Galactic Council archives. It mentions something called the Devourers. According to their records, this species has consumed entire galactic clusters. They travel from galaxy to galaxy, eating everything in their path." The messages painted a horrifying picture. The Galactic Council had known about this threat for decades. Ancient texts spoke of the Devourers' last visit millions of years ago. They had consumed countless civilizations before moving on to search for new feeding grounds. Now they were coming back. So young, Lee had been coordinating the defense of the abandoned colonies when the intelligence reports reached her. As a former military commander, she understood tactics and strategy. What the aliens had done was militarily sound but morally horrific. "They have created a buffer zone," she explained to the defense ministers. "They isolated us in the outer systems where the Devourers will arrive first. While we fight and die, they will have time to prepare their core world's defenses." "Can we warn the other species?" asked one minister. "Surely they would unite against this threat if they knew how serious it was." So Young shook her head. "They already know. Every species in the Galactic Council is aware of what is coming. They chose to sacrifice us rather than face the Devourers together. The revelation changed everything about how humanity viewed their situation. They were not being punished for crimes they had committed. They were being used as disposable shields by species they had considered allies." Mi Young's reconnaissance missions revealed more disturbing details. The Devourer fleet was not just large, it was impossibly diverse. Some ships were organic creatures the size of cities. Others appeared to be living planets that had developed space travel. All of them showed signs of having consumed and absorbed technology from countless civilizations. "They do not just eat matter," she reported. "They absorb knowledge and technology. Every species they consume makes them smarter and more dangerous." Dongwu studied the biological samples that long-range probes had managed to collect from the edge of Devourer space. What he found was unlike anything in Earth's databases. The organisms showed characteristics from hundreds of different evolutionary paths. "They are not a single species," he concluded. "They are a collective. Every life form they encounter gets absorbed into their network. They become part of the whole while the whole becomes stronger." This discovery had terrifying implications. If the Devourers reached human space, they would not just destroy humanity. They would absorb human knowledge and technology, making them even more dangerous to the rest of the galaxy. Hyunwoo uncovered more historical records from alien databases. The last time the Devourers had visited this galaxy, They had consumed entire star systems before moving on. Only the most isolated and well-defended worlds had survived. Even then, galactic civilization had taken millions of years to recover. According to these records, the Devourers follow a pattern, he reported. They enter the galaxy from the outer edge and work their way inward. They consume everything in a spiral pattern until they reach the galactic core. Then they move on to the next galaxy. So Young realized the implications immediately, which means human space is exactly where they will enter the galaxy. The weight of this knowledge was crushing. Humanity faced an enemy that had consumed countless civilizations across multiple galaxies. An enemy that grew stronger with every victory. An enemy that the rest of the galaxy was too afraid to fight. But as the news spread through the human government and military, something unexpected happened. Instead of despair, there was anger. Instead of surrender, there was determination. "Let me understand this correctly," said Admiral Yoon-ji Cho at the Emergency Military Council. "The aliens who condemned us for being too aggressive are now hiding behind us while the real threat approaches?" "That is correct," replied the intelligence director. "And they expect us to die fighting this enemy while they prepare their own defenses. That appears to be their plan." Admiral Cho was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "They have made one critical error in their calculations." "What is that?" asked the defense minister. "They assume we will lose," she replied. "They assume that because every other species has failed against the Devourers, we will fail as well. They do not understand what makes humans different." Mi Young's final reconnaissance report confirmed that the Devourer fleet would reach the outer edge of human space within 3 months. The alien species were already retreating to their core worlds, abandoning entire star systems to create a clear field of fire. But humanity was not retreating. Ships and resources poured into the Sol system. Weapons platforms were built at an unprecedented rate. Scientists worked around the clock developing new technologies. "We are going to make a stand," President Lim announced to the world. "Not just for ourselves, but for every species in this galaxy. We will show the Devourers what happens when they threaten human space." The stage was set for the greatest battle in galactic history. On one side, an ancient enemy that had never known defeat. On the other, a young species that had never learned to surrender. The emergency session in Luna Station's council chambers had been going for 18 hours straight. Representatives from every human colony, military leaders, and the planet's brightest scientists debated the impossible choice that faced their species. President Jae-sung Lim sat at the head of the curved table, looking at faces filled with exhaustion and determination through the chamber's windows. Earth hung like a blue marble in the darkness, surrounded by the lights of defensive platforms being built at record speed. "The facts are simple," said Admiral Yoon-ji Cho, standing before the holographic display that showed the approaching Devourer fleet. "We face an enemy that has never been defeated. Our allies have abandoned us. We have 3 options: run deeper into space, surrender and hope for mercy, or fight." "Running is not really an option," interrupted Dr. Kyung-ho Nam, Director of Advanced Weapons Research. "Our long-range scouts report that the Devourers have spread out to cover all possible escape routes. They are herding us toward the galactic core, just as they have done to countless species before us." General So-young Lee nodded in agreement. "Surrender is also meaningless. The Devourers do not take prisoners. They consume everything. Every person, every piece of technology, every scrap of knowledge becomes part of their collective. Which leaves us with fighting," said President Lim. "Against impossible odds, with no help from our former allies." Yu-jin Song, the chief diplomat, had spent the past week trying to contact the Galactic Council. Her reports were not encouraging. "I have sent messages to every member species. Most do not respond at all. Those who do simply repeat that humanity brought this fate upon themselves through aggressive expansion. Even now, with the Devourers almost upon us, they maintain that lie?" asked Admiral Cho. "They have to," Yu-jin replied sadly. "If they admitted the truth about why they isolated us, their own people might demand they come to our aid. It is easier to let us die as criminals than to risk their own lives to save us as heroes." The debate continued through the night. Some argued for evacuation of Earth's population to the outer planets, buying time for a negotiated settlement. Others pushed for an immediate preemptive strike against the Devourers while they were still far from human space. Dr. Nam had been quiet for most of the discussion, But now he stood and activated his own holographic display. There is something you all need to see. Project Deep Strike has been developing weapons that go beyond conventional technology. The display showed technical diagrams that few people in the room could understand. We have created quantum entanglement bombs. When detonated, they create localized disruptions in space-time itself. The energy release is unprecedented. How unprecedented? Asked Admiral Cho. A single bomb could destroy a planet. A cluster of them could tear apart a star system. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. You are talking about weapons of mass destruction on a scale never before imagined, said President Lim. Yes, Dr. Nam replied. But the Devourers are a threat on a scale never before imagined. Conventional weapons have failed against them for millions of years. If we are going to have any chance, we need to use unconventional methods. General Lee studied the technical displays. What about our AI-controlled ship swarms? Are they ready for deployment? More than ready, Nam replied with pride. Our artificial intelligence has evolved beyond what any other species has achieved. Each AI can control hundreds of drone ships simultaneously. They can coordinate attacks, adapt to enemy tactics, and make tactical decisions faster than any biological mind. The aliens were afraid of our AI development, noted Yujin. Now we know why. They could never create anything like this themselves. Admiral Cho began to see the shape of a strategy forming. So we have weapons that can disrupt space-time and AI systems that can outthink any biological opponent. What else? The most important advantage of all, said President Lim. Something that cannot be measured or quantified. We have something that every other species the Devourers have faced has lacked. Which is? Asked General Lee. We are willing to sacrifice everything to protect others, even those who have betrayed us. The room buzzed with conversation as the implications of this statement became clear. Every other species had faced the Devourers thinking only of their own survival. They had fought to save themselves, their worlds, their civilizations. When defeat became inevitable, they had surrendered or fled. You are suggesting we fight not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy, said Yujin. Exactly, replied the President. The aliens think they can hide behind us while we die. They are wrong. We are going to save them whether they want us to or not. Dr. Nam activated another display showing the defensive grid that now surrounded the Sol system. We have built the most concentrated defensive network in galactic history. Every moon, every asteroid, every piece of space debris larger than a car has been turned into a weapons platform. The Devourers will face a wall of fire unlike anything they have encountered before, added Admiral Cho. But more than that, they will face an enemy that fights with a purpose beyond survival. The debate shifted from whether to fight to how to fight. Military commanders outlined strategies for using Earth's moon as a fortress. Scientists described how the gas giant's gravity wells could be weaponized. Engineers explained how the asteroid belt had been turned into a maze of hidden weapons platforms. We are going to make them pay for every kilometer of space, declared General Lee. Even if we lose, we will hurt them so badly that the core worlds will have time to prepare proper defenses. We are not going to lose, President Lim said firmly. We are going to show the galaxy what humans can accomplish when we fight for something greater than ourselves. As the session continued, reports arrived from across human space. Volunteers were arriving from every former colony. Scientists who had lost their research stations were offering their knowledge. Soldiers who had been forced to abandon their posts were demanding the chance to fight. Even more surprising, alien refugees were arriving at human space stations. Members of species that the Galactic Council had declared too dangerous to save were seeking sanctuary with humanity. They brought with them knowledge of Devourer, tactics from ancient records, and offers to fight. Alongside their human protectors, the galaxy's outcasts are choosing to stand with us, reported Yujin with amazement. Species that have been ignored or persecuted by the Council see humanity as their only hope. Then we will not let them down, said Admiral Cho. We will build a fleet that includes the best of every species. Human technology, alien knowledge, and the determination to save everyone. The session ended with a unanimous vote. Humanity would make its stand in the Sol system. They would use every weapon, every strategy, every advantage they could create or imagine. Most importantly, they would fight not as a condemned species seeking survival, but as the galaxy's self-appointed guardians. As the representatives left to begin preparations, President Lim remained behind, looking out at the stars. Somewhere in that darkness, an ancient enemy approached. But for the first time since the trial, he felt hope. The Galactic Council had tried to use humanity as a disposable shield. Instead, they had created exactly what the galaxy needed: a species with nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The first sign of the Devourer fleet appeared on the long-range sensors at exactly 1432 Earth Standard Time. The massive organic shapes emerged from hyperspace, at the edge of the Sol system like a plague spreading across the stars. Changmin Park sat in the cockpit of his fighter, part of the first wave of human defenders stationed near Pluto's orbit. Through his helmet display, he could see the enemy fleet stretching across space like a living nightmare. Ships the size of moons pulsed with absorbed energy. Smaller craft swarmed around them like insects around a corpse. "All fighters, this is Control," came the voice of Admiral Yunji Cho from the command ship. "Remember your training. These things adapt quickly, so do not use the same attack pattern twice. Make every shot count." Changmin checked his weapon systems one final time. His fighter carried a mix of conventional missiles and the new quantum torpedoes that Dr. Nam's team had developed. Behind him, 1,000 other fighters prepared for the opening engagement of "Humanity's Last Stand, Here They Come," whispered his wingman over the radio. The Devourer scouts moved toward the human defensive line like a tide of death. Each ship was different from the others, showing characteristics absorbed from countless consumed civilizations. Some looked like giant squids made of metal and flesh. Others resembled crystalline spiders with weapons grown from their own bodies. "Engage," ordered Changmin, diving toward the nearest enemy ship. The space around Pluto erupted in fire and light. Human fighters danced between the massive Devourer vessels, using their speed and maneuverability to stay ahead of weapons that could vaporize them with a single hit. Changmin launched his first quantum torpedo and watched it tear a hole through an enemy ship the size of a skyscraper. But the Devourers adapted quickly. Within minutes, their remaining ships had modified their defenses to resist the quantum weapons. Changmin switched to conventional missiles and found they were almost useless against the organic armor. "They are learning our tactics faster than we can change them," he reported to Control. In the command center deep within Luna Station, Icha Kim coordinated the AI defense network that surrounded the Sol system. Thousands of drone ships responded to her commands, attacking in perfectly synchronized waves that no biological pilot could match. "The AI swarms are having better success," she reported to Admiral Cho. "The Devourers cannot predict their behavior patterns because they think faster than any organic mind." On her screens, Icha watched the AI-controlled ships execute complex maneuvers that would have been impossible for human pilots. They worked together like a single organism, sharing information instantly and adapting their tactics in real time. But even the AI swarms faced a deadly enemy. The Devourers had consumed artificial intelligences from other species and were beginning to understand how to fight them. Slowly but surely, the organic ships began to counter the drone attacks. "We are losing fighters faster than we can replace them," reported the tactical officer. "The outer defensive line will not hold much longer." Captain Seokjin Lee commanded the heavy cruiser Indomitable, positioned in the asteroid belt where humanity had built its strongest defensive positions. Around his ship, weapons platforms hidden among the asteroids opened fire on the approaching Devourer fleet. "Target the large ships first," he ordered his crew. "Those appear to be their command vessels." The Indomitable's main guns fired quantum entanglement rounds that tore through space itself. Direct hits caused massive damage to the organic ships, but there were so many of them that destroying individual vessels seemed almost meaningless. "Sir, the enemy is adapting to our quantum weapons," reported his weapons officer. "Their armor is becoming resistant to space-time disruption." Seok-jin watched on his displays as the Devourers learned to defend against humanity's most powerful weapons. It was exactly what the scientists had feared. The enemy absorbed not just matter and energy, but knowledge and adaptations. "Then we will have to get creative," he replied. "Prepare the ramming charges." His crew looked at him in shock. The ramming charges were a last resort weapon. They would turn the Indomitable itself into a guided missile capable of destroying even the largest enemy ships, but using them would mean certain death for everyone aboard. "Sir, are you sure?" asked his first officer. "Look at the tactical display," Seok-jin replied calmly. "We are outnumbered 1,000 to 1. Our advanced weapons are becoming useless as they adapt. The only advantage we have left is our willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Meanwhile, Dr. Hee-Young Choi worked frantically in the medical bay of the hospital ship Hope. Wounded fighters and support crew arrived constantly from the battle zones. Many had injuries she had never seen before, caused by devourer weapons that seemed to attack the body on a molecular level. The enemy weapons do not just destroy tissue, she reported to Medical Command. They appear to break down the quantum bonds that hold matter together. Victims are literally dissolving at the atomic level. Despite the horrific nature of the wounds, she refused to give up on any patient. Human medicine had always been about pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Now those boundaries would be tested like never before. Doctor, we have reports of biological contamination on the ships that engage the enemy at close range, reported her assistant. The devourers seem to release spores or parasites that try to take over human nervous systems. Hee-Young immediately began developing countermeasures. If the devourers could infect humans the way they had infected other species, the battle would be lost before it really began. She worked without sleep, using experimental treatments that would normally take years to test. The battle raged for 3 days. Humanity threw everything they had at the devourer fleet, but the organic ships kept adapting and advancing. The outer defensive lines fell one by one as the enemy learned to counter each new tactic. On the 4th day, Captain Seok-jin made his fateful decision. The Indomitable and 5 other heavy cruisers broke formation and charged directly at the largest devourer ship, a living planet that served as the enemy's command center. For humanity and for the galaxy, he broadcast on all frequencies as his ship accelerated toward its target. The ramming attack succeeded beyond all expectations. The quantum entanglement bombs built into the human ships did not just destroy the command vessel. They created a chain reaction that spread through the organic network linking all the devourer ships. Dozens of enemy vessels were caught in the space-time disruption and torn apart. Chang Min, still fighting in the outer system, watched in amazement as almost a tenth of the enemy fleet simply vanished in a cascade of brilliant light. "Control, the big ones are pulling back. They are actually retreating." For the first time in galactic history, the devourers had encountered meaningful resistance. Their ancient confidence had been shaken by an enemy that fought with tactics and weapons they had never faced before. More importantly, they had fought an enemy that was willing to sacrifice everything for victory. Admiral Cho received reports from across the system. The devourer fleet was regrouping beyond weapons range, apparently trying to understand what had happened to their command structure. "We hurt them," she announced to the defenders. "We actually hurt them badly enough to make them pause and reconsider." But everyone knew this was only the beginning. The devourers would adapt to humanity's sacrifice tactics just as they had adapted to everything else. When they returned, they would be ready for kamikaze attacks and quantum weapons. Aicha ran diagnostics on her AI network and found that many of the drones had been infected by devourer parasites. The enemy was learning to corrupt human artificial intelligence, turning their own weapons against them. "They are not just adapting to our tactics," she reported grimly. "They are beginning to understand our technology well enough to use it against us." The first battle was over, but the war was just beginning. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented, forcing the devourers to retreat and regroup. But they had paid a terrible price, and the enemy would return stronger and smarter than before. In the brief respite between battles, one thing became clear: the galaxy's fate would be decided in the next engagement. If humanity could find a way to win decisively, they would save countless civilizations. If they failed, there would be nothing left to stop the devourers from consuming everything. 3 weeks had passed since the devourer fleet retreated to the edge of human space. For the first time in galactic history, the ancient enemy had been forced to pause and reconsider their tactics. But Admiral Dong-hyun knew this respite would not last forever. From his command ship, the new flagship Defiance, he watched the construction of the most ambitious project humanity had ever attempted. The entire Sol system was being turned into a fortress that would make their previous defenses look like toys. "Status report," he requested from his staff. "The quantum disruption network is 70% complete," reported his tactical officer. "When finished, it will create a barrier that makes hyperspace travel impossible within 3 light-years of Earth." "The AI evolution project is showing remarkable results," added the science officer. Our artificial intelligences are now capable of independent innovation. They are creating new weapons and tactics faster than any biological mind could conceive. But the most remarkable change was not technological. It was the arrival of refugees from across the galaxy. Species that the Galactic Council had written off as expendable were streaming toward human space, seeking protection from the Devourers. Ambassador Su-Jin Wang managed the massive relief effort from Luna Station. Her staff worked around the clock to accommodate beings with radically different environmental needs. Silicon-based life forms that breathed methane, energy beings that fed on radiation, aquatic species that required high-pressure water environments. "How many new arrivals today?" she asked her assistant. 47 ships carrying approximately 12,000 refugees, came the reply. Most are from the outer rim worlds that the Council abandoned. They bring reports that the Devourers have consumed 3 entire star systems while regrouping. Sujin felt a mixture of sadness and determination. Each refugee ship represented worlds that had been lost forever. But they also represented hope. These were species that refused to give up, that chose to fight alongside humanity rather than flee to the galactic core. Engineer Min-Seo Kim worked with alien refugees to adapt human technology for their use. Her greatest breakthrough came from collaborating with the crystalline Zenthari, a species whose understanding of quantum mechanics far exceeded human knowledge. "Look at this," she showed Admiral O, displaying holographic equations that seemed to shift and change as he watched them. The Zenthari can manipulate quantum fields directly through their crystalline structures. Combined with our AI control systems, we can create weapons that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Meaning what, exactly?" the Admiral asked. "Meaning we can hit the Devourers even when they try to phase out of normal spacetime to avoid our attacks." Meanwhile, Intelligence Chief Junho Beck coordinated with resistance movements throughout the galaxy. Not every species had accepted the Galactic Council's strategy of using humanity as a shield. Small groups of rebels from dozens of worlds were conducting sabotage operations against Devourer scout ships. Listening, Catherian resistance destroyed a Devourer probe ship in the Vega system, he reported to the command staff. "They used modified human quantum torpedoes that we smuggled to them last month." "Any response from the Galactic Council?" asked Admiral O. "They have declared the Catherian resistance to be criminals and terrorists," Junho replied with disgust. "They would rather condemn species fighting for survival than admit their own strategy is wrong." The breakthrough everyone had been waiting for came from an unexpected source. A young Devourer organism, barely the size of a human hand, had been captured during the last battle. Dr. Hee-Young Choi had been studying it for weeks, trying to understand how the collective consciousness worked. "It is not just a hive mind," she explained to the assembled scientists and military leaders. "Each individual organism retains some independence, but they are linked by quantum entanglement across vast distances. If we can disrupt that connection, the entire fleet becomes vulnerable." Min-Seo immediately saw the implications. "We can use the quantum disruption network, not just to prevent hyperspace travel, but to sever their collective consciousness. They will become individual ships instead of a unified force." "But there is more," Dr. Choi continued. "I have been experimenting with introducing human neural patterns into the organism. It appears that our way of thinking is fundamentally incompatible with their collective structure. Human individualism acts like a virus in their network." Admiral O felt a chill as he understood what she was suggesting. "You want to infect them with humanity." "Not physically," she clarified, "but our thought patterns, our way of processing information, our refusal to surrender individual identity for collective efficiency. If we can inject these concepts into their network, it will tear their unity apart from within." The plan that emerged was audacious even by human standards. They would not just fight the Devourers. They would fundamentally change what the Devourers were. The quantum disruption network would be modified to broadcast human consciousness patterns directly into the enemy fleet. But first, they had to survive the Devourers' return. The enemy came back stronger than before. Their ships had adapted to resist quantum weapons and ramming attacks. Worse, they had learned to infect human AI systems, turning humanity's greatest advantage against them. "Our drone swarms are compromised," reported the tactical officer as the battle began. "The enemy is taking control of our artificial intelligences." "Then we fight the old-fashioned way," replied Admiral O, "with human pilots and human determination." Changmin Park, now promoted to squadron leader after his survival of the first battle, led waves of manned fighters against the returning fleet. Without AI assistance, the pilots had to rely on skill, instinct, and courage. "Remember," he told his squadron over the radio, "they may have learned our tactics, but they have never learned to think like humans. Be unpredictable. Be crazy if you have to. Do things that make no logical sense." The human pilots responded with tactics that defied military logic. They used their ships as clubs, ramming small enemy vessels out of pure spite. They flew patterns that seemed random, but concealed brilliant strategic thinking. Most importantly, they fought with a joy and ferocity that the Devourers had never encountered. These humans fight like they enjoy it. One captured Devourer communication revealed. Their emotional responses interfere with tactical prediction models. The battle raged across the Sol system for days. Human ships fell in flames, but they took enemies with them. Refugee vessels joined the fight, their alien crews learning human tactics and adding their own innovations. Then Minseo activated the modified quantum disruption network. The effect was immediate and devastating. Across the Devourer fleet, the collective consciousness began to fracture. Individual ships started making independent decisions. Some continued attacking, others tried to flee, and a few simply stopped moving as their crews experienced individual thought for the first time in millions of years. "It is working," shouted Sujin from the Refugee Coordination Center. "The Devourers are fighting among themselves." But the most remarkable change was yet to come. Some of the Devourer organisms, infected with human thought patterns, began to resist their own fleet. Ships that had been part of the enemy force suddenly turned and attacked their former comrades. "We have converts," reported Admiral O in amazement. "Some of the Devourers are switching sides." The tide of battle turned decisively. The unified force that had consumed galaxies was now a chaotic mass of competing individuals, many of whom had been infected with humanity's stubborn refusal to surrender. As the surviving Devourers fled back toward the galactic edge, a transmission arrived that shocked everyone. It came from the Galactic Council, sent on emergency frequencies. "To the human government," the message began. "The outer defense lines have fallen. Devourer advanced forces have broken through to the core worlds. We request immediate assistance." The very beings who had condemned humanity as criminals were now begging for help from the species they had tried to sacrifice. Admiral O called an emergency meeting of all human and refugee leaders. The debate was brief but intense. "They left us to die," argued one refugee captain. "Let them face the Devourers alone." "If we help them, we save billions of innocent lives," countered Ambassador Sujin. "We cannot become the monsters they thought we were." Admiral O made the decision that would define humanity's future. "We launch immediately. Full fleet, all available ships. We save everyone, even those who betrayed us." The human fleet that departed from Sol was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human ships flew alongside vessels from dozens of species. Converted Devourer organisms served as scouts and infiltrators. Most remarkably, the fleet was commanded by both human admirals and artificial intelligences that had evolved beyond their original programming. The final battle took place at the galactic core, where the desperate remnants of the Galactic Council made their last stand. Human ships arrived just as the Council fleets were about to be overwhelmed. "This is Admiral Dong Hyun-O of the Sol Defense Force." He broadcast to all frequencies. "We are here to help." The battle was brief but decisive. The Devourer forces, still fractured by their infection with human individualism, could not coordinate effectively against the combined human refugee fleet. More importantly, they faced an